Order for Monday, September 18th, 2006. Let's please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Arbogast.
Here.
Garnis.
Here.
Hisselbeck.
Here.
Heller. Johnson.
Here.
Meisenheimer.
Here.
Solberg. Walder.
Here.
Wilson. Here. And York. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Item number 1 is the motion to approve the minutes of the City Council meeting held on September 5th, 2006. Have a motion, please. So moved by Alderman Solberg. Is there a second? Seconded by Alderwoman Walder. Are there any additions or corrections to those minutes? If not, then all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Number 2 is the application for transfer of a package off-sale liquor license from Scott McEnroy and Kathy McEnroy, which is inactive, to JML Incorporated, doing business as the liquor store. We'll begin with a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak to the issue?
I appear with the persons with JML seeking the license, but we are in favor of.
Sure. Okay. Let the record show that their attorney did speak, Doug Austin. If not, then we'll close the public hearing and go to council action. Everything appears to be in order in that, so if we could have a motion then to approve the transfer. So moved by Alderman Wilson, seconded by Alderman Meisenheimer. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 3 is the Casino Speedway property rezoning ordinance number 06-20. Sarah?
Yes, the owner of this property is Earl Benson of Benson Enterprises. The property is approximately 10 acres in size, and the requested rezone is from residential single to heavy industrial. The property is located in the 100 block of South Lake Drive, immediately south of Stokes Thomas Lake City Park Campground. It's been in existence as a speedway for over 50 years, and the reason that they're requesting the rezone is that naturally after 50 years they need to do some improvements to it, more than just maintenance, which they've been limited to since their classification does not coincide with the zoning. The Plan Commission has reviewed this and made a resolution. There was a slight change to the resolution, so I printed out a new one and placed it by your seat in red. The conditions that the Plan Commission placed on this speedway rezone are that the owner, his heirs, successors, or assigns will, within 90 days of property ceasing to operate as a speedway, voluntarily petition to rezone the property from I-2 heavy industrial back to R1 single family residential. Parking may be expanded, but neither seating capacity nor track size may be changed or expanded. The speedway will operate for no more than 21 days or events per year, as long as it's owned by Benson Enterprises Incorporated. And any owner other than Benson Enterprises Incorporated must request permission of the City of Watertown Plan Commission to operate more than 21 days or events per year. With that resolution, the Plan Commission recommended approval of the rezone. The ordinance in your packet is not how it will look if you pass it. There won't be any conditions placed actually on the ordinance itself. It'll read through, and then down toward the bottom third where it has the conditions listed, that'll just be gone. If you pass the ordinance, it'll look like that, except it won't have that language in it. I received one letter, and I guess I can wait until you open the public hearing.
Thank you, Sarah. We'll begin then with the public hearing. Sarah, would you like to begin
Sure.
opening with the public hearing?
I'll read the letter. This letter was received from Karen Crane of 113 South Lake Drive. I would like the Watertown Plan Commission to know that I oppose the rezoning of the Casino Speedway. The noise on race nights is deafening when you are outside on South Lake Drive. Even inside the house, it is difficult to hear. Sunday night, my brother from Oregon called, and I had to keep telling him that I couldn't hear what he was trying to say, even when I tried going into rooms farther away from the racetrack. The noise also affects people miles from the Casino Speedway. I grew up on the block where the Millette House is, and we could hear the races all the way into town. I know people who live all around the lake that can always hear the races and sometimes think it's in their backyard. A heavy industrial district doesn't belong within our city limits. I'm sure the many campers from all over the country who frequent our city park wouldn't want any louder noises on Sunday nights or for it to go on past 10 p.m. either. The Casino Speedway already goes past the 10 p.m. noise curfew for residential zoning, sometimes until midnight. When we first moved in, we called the police to try and stop the noise after 10 p.m., but apparently no one is able to enforce the rules for current zoning. I also know that the Casino Speedway has replaced their stands for seating and other improvements that were not supposed to be done over the years under the current zoning. Hopefully the Plan Commission will agree that this change would be a move in the wrong direction. Thank you for your time. Sincerely, Karen Crane, 113 South Lake Drive.
Thank you, Sarah. Is there anyone else here to speak to the issue? If not, then I'll close the public hearing and we'll go to council action for the either approval or non-approval ordinance number 06-20. Have a motion, please? So moved by Alderman Solberg. Is there a second? Second. Seconded by Alderman Wilson. Any discussion?
Bruce, you're here, right? Yeah. At the Planning Commission, did you have anybody speaking out in opposition to it at that level?
In opposition to the track, I don't believe we did at that time. I noticed that the Cranes aren't here, and I do know that they built that house with full knowledge of the racetrack in the vicinity. So, but I didn't sense any displeasure outside of. I should say we did have a couple other landowners, and I think there were new landowners that did voice some opposition to that.
Bruce, which is their house?
Pardon me?
Which is their house?
It's on the block property. It's straight west. It's a ranch house just straight west. It's on the east side of the road. If you know where I mean.
For the council's benefit, if I could, in addition to what Chairman Bueller said, what I recognize from the discussion at the Plan Commission meeting wasn't that residents in that immediate area were necessarily opposed to the casino or to the racetrack, but they were opposed to rezoning the property to I-2 because of the other implications if the racetrack went away that might exist as a result of having that zoning. So I think that was probably the bigger discussion we heard from a number of people. It wasn't. They said, we understand the Speedway's been there, as long as we can all remember, and it functions in that capacity so many days out of the year, and we've kind of got used to that, even though at times it's an inconvenience and the noise is a nuisance. We understand that and we can live with that. But to zone it I-2 and to potentially have a heavy industrial business show up on that site was not something they wanted.
And that's the reason for the type of amendment we put to that motion to, make folks aware that it would only be used for that particular type of operation. So we hopefully put their minds at ease with that.
Okay. Any other questions or discussions?
How is this, you said the copy that's in red wouldn't appear in the ordinance. How is that kept record of it?
If I could, Gordon, over here. I've been in contact with the Benson's attorney over the past several days discussing just how we would do that. I think Sarah wanted to memorialize what the Plan Commission recommended by way of restrictions in the event the rezoning, if this ordinance is approved by the council, wanted somehow or another to reduce to writing, so you folks had it in front of you what those restrictions were that the Plan Commission recommended to you. But the more appropriate course, in my opinion, is to somehow incorporate this into the chain of title, into the abstract of the Benson's property. So we are going to take a certified copy of this portion of the council minutes, place that in the chain of title for the Benson Enterprises property at the courthouse. Then subsequent to that, we're going to get a document drafted by the Benson's attorney that's going to be signed by them, acknowledging and agreeing that all the terms and conditions now become part of the chain of title, so any subsequent owner is going to know what these restrictions are.
You're comfortable with all this, Stan?
Yes, with the understanding of the council and the motion makers that if in fact this is approved tonight, we're going to defer publishing the ordinance, because as you know, that starts to trigger for the ordinance rezoning the property becoming effective. I've mentioned to the Benson's attorney what we'll do is defer publishing the ordinance in the newspaper until we've got the documents in the chain of title, so we know that they're in place before the ordinance becomes effective. So.
Okay, thank you, Stan. Any other questions? If not, then we'll have a vote. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Going on to item number 4, Dakota Commons 4th edition. Item number A has been postponed to a later date. We'll move on to item B. And Sarah?
Item B is the proposed zoning for the property, which was annexed at the last council meeting. And I will read that. An ordinance amending the zoning district boundaries by establishing zoning designation of PUD, Planned Unit Development District, for certain real property annexed into the city in the northwest quarter of Section 33, 11752. This property is located along, it's just east of 19th Street East and south of 3rd Avenue North. And it's, if you know where Human Service Agency is, it's across the street from that. It's owned by Dakota Commons LLC, managed by John Mills. The property in question to be zoned tonight is 5.6 acres in size, and it's part of an overall PUD which included mostly residential single, some residential multi, community areas, and a little bit of commercial development. This area is single family. The PUD master plan was approved in 2002, and they have been annexing and zoning little pieces bit by bit as they develop gradually and sell lots off. The zoning of PUD is consistent with the overall master plan.
Can we go to the public hearing?
You may.
We'll open the public hearing then for the Dakota Commons 4th edition to the establishing a zoning designation. Is there anyone here to speak to the issue? If not, then I'll close the public hearing and go to council action. Can I have a motion then to approve resolution 06-21?
So moved.
So moved by Alderman Garnis, seconded by Alderman Giselbeck. Any discussion?
Mayor,
Yes.
I have one question. I noticed that all the plating is with cul-de-sacs, and I know the street department usually doesn't like all those cul-de-sacs. Is that a problem as far as Mike Rye is concerned?
Mike, do you want to step up and...
Thanks, Dennis. That was all approved with the original plan, and we accept that.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Any other questions? If not, then all those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 5 is Lanew's 3rd edition plan approval, resolution 06-42. Sarah?
Okay, the Lanew's 3rd edition property is owned by John Agee. It's approximately 40 acres of land. It's located on the north shore of Lake Pelican, and this lies within the county. To get there, you go down 42nd Street or 451st Avenue. I'm not sure. What do they call it out there? They call it 42nd Street. And then west along 20th Avenue Southwest. They're proposing to subdivide the property into 18 2-acre lots. This has been in the works for several years, off and on. The master plan was approved in March of '04, so it's been about 2.5 years since the county approved the master plan. The owner wants to create a unique development, which is partly rural, partly urban environment. Since this property lies within 3 miles of the city limits, the city has planning jurisdiction, which means that the city can impose the subdivision requirements that we have within our city limits there, and have a say in whether or not that plat is approved in the county. The county did approve the plat contingent upon the city approving the plat. The Plan Commission spent quite a bit of time reviewing this proposal, I think a couple of times over the years, and they recommended approval with 6 conditions, which are listed in your packet on the Plan Commission resolution. And I'd like to say that 5 of those conditions were relatively minor and have been met. One condition that hasn't been met is that the owners sign a letter of assurance, which is written by the city. And that letter of assurance is in your packet. I'll just briefly go through some of the high points that are in the letter of assurance. In the city of Watertown city limits, if someone wanted to subdivide land, they would have to build sewers. The sewers are 1.5 miles away from this property, and so in lieu of sewers, the city is asking that they put in sealed holding tanks until the sewers are available, and then that they connect to the sewers. The city's asking that they will agree to voluntarily annex their land when the city limits becomes contiguous to their property. They're being asked to agree to construct the south half of 20th Avenue South and pay for that improvement. That's on the north side of their property. It does not go through their property, but it butts the top lots. The city's asking that when annexation occurs, that the internal streets will be built to city standards, that sidewalks and trails will be built to city standards, that they comply with the city landscape requirements, and that park dedication requirements be met. These things are upon annexation. And I just want to reiterate that those items where the city has indicated that we'd like the developer to do those things upon annexation are compromises. The city could require those things today, but that's not what is being required. Those things are being required upon annexation, so that when the city does come out there, we don't have a substandard piece of land which we then incorporate within our city limits. You've all received a letter proposing changes to the city's letter of assurance from John Wiles, who's the attorney for John Agee. And I'm assuming you've all had a chance to go over that. I did change the letter of assurance that the city wrote to remove Nyla Agee's name because she's not an owner. I thought she was. So I took that part out. And I have a letter of assurance with me that is the one that's proposed by the Plan Commission. And they have requested several other changes. I have also drafted a letter of assurance with those changes so that if the council decided either way, we have a letter of assurance ready to go. I think that covers it, Mr. Johnson. Do you have any policy-related comments?
I guess the only thing I would do is just set the context of this a little bit. As you all remember, we've also had an aquifer protection ordinance that came before this council earlier this year, which we have not acted on yet, and as part of that is the issue of septics in that whole area out there. This particular plat or the master plan had come before us prior to that ordinance being drafted, and as a result of that, there's been debate on whether or not to allow that that one to go through before we pass the other ordinance. And I guess that's just the context of where things are at.
Sir, I have to ask the question. The staff had recommended the approval of the septic tanks, but yet the Plan Commission recommended not to do that, but go with sealed containers. What happened there?
Well, I believe that, and Bruce, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the Plan Commission, well, first of all, the staff recommended septic tanks be allowed temporarily until sewer's available, primarily because this had been in the process for a number of years, and also that although this is a compromise to put in septic systems, that we would have some assurance that the sanitary sewers would be constructed at some point, and that all of these properties would eventually be connected to sanitary sewer when it became available. And the Plan Commission, I believe, two things. They felt that this is a very sensitive area over the aquifer and probably an inappropriate place to put septic tanks. And two, that putting septic tanks in this area, which is largely undeveloped, would set a precedent for further development, and there's a lot of potential. I mean, this is 18 lots, but there's a potential for a great many more hookups in that area, and if we start doing septic tanks, we might be doing a lot more septic tanks in the future. Bruce, do you want to add to that?
I'll just add, I think that it would set a dangerous precedent if we do this. I know that we had this discussion with Steve Horning with a large area of lots that he had. At one time, they were rural-sized lots, and he requested septic systems there, and we basically told him he could not do that. But I do think if we do this, then we've told Mr. Horning that he couldn't do it. I think that might be a problem for us, and I do believe it would set a negative precedent for us. I think it's a bad idea to have a septic tank right next to the lake. And if we do it here, we're going to end up with more of them, and that's our greatest fear. Also, being right over a shallow aquifer, once that's, if that gets polluted, that's a big problem for a long time. And that's a very important resource to this community is our water system. And we pump water out of that we use every day, so it's important to protect it. And I think I speak for most of the folks on the Planning Commission in that regard.
We're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves on this discussion. I'd like to ask a motion then to approve a letter of assurance as recommended by the Plan Commission. Is there a motion?
So moved.
So moved by Alderman Johnson. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alderman Wilson. Before I begin the discussion, I want to give John, is there anything you'd like to add that isn't already in the letter packets that you sent us in regards to the letter of assurance?
I think I do,
Okay.
We're kind of approaching this a little differently than I thought we would, but if we're going to now have discussion on the motion, this is a plat that is being proposed that is within the 3-mile jurisdiction of the city, but is beyond any expectation of when that property or when the city would be prepared to annex it, which puts us in kind of a dilemma because of the statutes that govern this as well as the city ordinances that govern it. And Stanton and I have had our discussion about those disagreements and how we can proceed. And what has been said so far by Sir is pretty much correct in that what we're looking at here is a compromise that tries to resolve some otherwise thorny issues that we'd like to kind of put behind us. The original Planning Commission recommendation was that we use septic tanks. And you have been provided in your packet tonight with a letter that Scott Hipple from DENR wrote regarding septic tanks. And Jay Kofer is here from DENR if you wanted to further explore that particular issue. But suffice it to say is that we think that the City Planning Commission's recommendation that you go to sealed tanks is one, not necessary, and two, just put it in this perspective. We're prepared to compromise on the city's proposed letter of assurance. Let me tell you for certain that we're not completely comfortable with the whole thing, but that's not the particular point. We are prepared to go ahead with the letter of assurance as it's written, taking out Nyland as a property owner, substituting the language that the city planners had put in initially about septic tanks, changing the contract term to this letter of assurance from 20 years to 10 years, and then in paragraph C, the one I like the best is that if you sue us or we sue you, we both can recover attorney's fees, not just the city.
So what additional item, John, is there that you want to add that isn't included in this here letter that you sent us?
No, other than I think that the city planning commission, when it got the information that it received most recently, the information was perhaps not as accurate as it should have been, and that it was incomplete, and that the information that is being provided by Scott Hipple in the letter that you have is, one, accurate, two, that the property does qualify under DENR for the use of septic tanks, and three, it's a lot higher ground than Steve Horning's ground, so that's not really an issue. And beyond that, it's beyond Horning's ground to the extent that I have no clue when you, as the city of Watertown, is going to get out there to annex it. But beyond that, when you get there and you got your city annexation in, you got your city water and sewer and everything else there, we're prepared to voluntarily join the city and hook on.
Okay, thank you, John. I would like to ask the council then for comments, whether they're inclined to make any substitute motions to change the letter of assurance or not. So, any discussion, please?
So I'd like Jay to come up and tell us what your thoughts on that.
Yes, I'm Jay Colfer. I'm with the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. I work in the field office here in Watertown. Had a specific question, Mr. Carnos? I'm not supporting one way or the other. I'm here if anybody has any questions regarding state requirements for septic systems at that site. It was mentioned that our septic system coordinator for the state, Scott Hipple, did receive a copy of the plot plan and topography map for the area, and from information he had on that lots out there did meet the state requirements for minimum lot size and setback from property lines, high water mark, the roads and whatnot that could be put in that way.
Okay.
From your experience, Jay, which is the better system, the sealed tanks or the septic tanks?
If properly, he's got some of the things we didn't look at out there were, some of the soil types and whatnot that wasn't included, but there's room on the lots, and if their systems are properly designed, installed, and operated, septic systems do minimize, the potential for contamination in the area. If you go with the sealed holding tank, then there's, financial considerations that aren't state's problem to worry about, and then you also have to worry about the pumping and disposal of the septic from the tanks. So that's an issue that would need to be addressed. If you get a full septic tank or a full holding tank, where's he going to take it?
How are septics monitored? How does one know if they're functioning the way they're supposed to? Is there anybody that checks on that, or is that the individual homeowner's responsibility?
Yeah, under the state rules is that they have to be designed and installed by a certified septic system installer, and that's a person that's certified and registered through our department, that's demonstrated that he has knowledge of the regulations and how they need to be installed. After that, it's up to the homeowner to make sure that they are properly operated by, being careful what he puts in them and having the septic tank itself pumped out and serviced as needed.
failures can occur, and how do you detect a failure?
Those come through our department or, you know, the local zoning authority if they have somebody that handles complaints like that. If they are notified by adjacent landowners or, you know, somebody else that sees it, and then if the state is notified, we request that we receive a written complaint form with who, what, when, where, and then staff from our department investigates it and takes the necessary enforcement action.
There was some comments on that a limited number of septic tanks could be put in the area without any problems. Is there a number that you can put in that area if we were to approve this? Are we bound to approve any others that come forward? How's that work, Stan?
I guess that to directly answer your question, Mr. Solberg, we start with the premise that the city can exercise its territorial jurisdiction to impose or to ensure compliance with all of our subdivision regulations. As we speak today, there's sort of a holding pattern with regard to the ordinances that we have in place and how that would implicate the plat that's before you tonight, or the letter of assurance that we're talking about right now. But we, in the future, if we change our ordinances, if the subdivision regulations change, there is nothing to say that if I think Mr. Bueller referred to Mr. Horning's proposed development out there, there would be nothing that would require us to allow septics in the future if we have ordinances in place that are part of our subdivision regulation that we can extend 3 miles outside from the corporate limits. We would potentially never see a septic system again if we hold to the letter of the subdivision regulation that prohibits them.
But another system or another development has been completed out there where septic tanks weren't allowed. Am I correct in this?
I think you're referring to Horning's.
To the Horning development?
I think I can probably answer that the best. At this point in time, the Horning development has gone through the preliminary plan process. Basically, it's a concept on paper. No plats have been brought to this body to address whether or not they would have septic tanks in those developments in the future. Now, given the density of about 270 homes in that development, this staff certainly wouldn't recommend that you approve septic tanks in that area, especially since they're contiguous to the city and can annex, and there's a sanitary system nearby that with some investment they can certainly hook into. The Aggies arguably have a little different issue in that they're further west, and it's going to be a while before the city gets to them. And so, you know, the question you have to ask yourselves is currently I don't have the exact number, but I know there's already about 30 septic tanks on the north side of Lake Pelican. Whether or not you want to add 18 more to that 30 and then potentially 4 or 5 more to the west, and you know, and it arguably can keep going on until we get our subdivision regulation changed with the Aquifer Protection Ordinance that you tabled here a couple months ago to prevent that. That's the stopgap mechanism that needs to be in place. That doesn't handle tonight. You have to make a decision based on what you know tonight on whether or not you approve or deny the plat that's in front of you.
I think that the bigger picture that we've been wrestling with is when we put off that ordinance that Herb just talked about specifically to deal with this issue, and you know, the question is whether we draw the line in the sand before at this point, or if we draw the line in the sand right after this point, because we have other developers that have been floating around out there with large developments. One thing the city really wants is orderly, contiguous development to the city. We do not want 40-acre development here and a 40-acre development there, and because we need to be growing out as a city and not scattered around. And so that's one of the issues. And then the other issue is the overall protection of the aquifer. Is 18 septic systems going to have just that huge of an impact? Probably not. But are 400 of them or 500 of them? Yes, it is. I mean, and Rapid City has got that problem right now with all the developments they've got going around up in the foothills, and those septic systems are definitely threatening the city's water supply, and they're going to have some serious issues out there to deal with. We want to avoid getting to that point. But then the question before us is where we're going to draw the line, here or after this. Planning Commission drew the line.
Yes, you may.
Jay, no question, septic tanks work.
You need to go up to the, up right there, John, to the microphone.
Jay, there's no question that septic tanks work when properly installed, is there?
No, they work.
And the effluent that is put into a septic tank, most of it evaporates above ground, doesn't it?
Depends on the system design and installation, but there's some evaporation and then some seepage into the ground. Site specific.
The systems that are approved by the state have a lot of evaporation above ground, don't they?
That's a general septic system design.
Okay, thank you.
Does council have any other discussion to this matter?
He just mentioned one thing that you said you're subject to the soil samples and that you hadn't done that out there. You just kind of slid that in there in your opening remarks.
No, that's the information that we received, that Scott Hippel received, was the plot plans that showed the size of the lot, setback distance, and the general topography. We did not receive any information as far as, you know, the soil types that are out there, and that's something that is examined site-specific for each septic system, that they're required, the homeowner and the developer is required to do percolation tests to determine site-specific soil conditions at each drain field site, and then design the drain field for size for that very specific area.
If I could. I also have a quick question. Who do we have to monitor, to inspect from the county or from the state? Septic systems, I believe, in my opinion, are as good as they are maintained. They can be properly installed, but over time they can fail. And my question is, who would do that inspection? Can anyone answer that? I don't believe there is a state or a county inspector.
We had that discussion at the Plan Commission, and I know for a fact there is no one at the county that inspects septic tanks, and when we asked the department that question, we were told the same thing. They don't have anybody that comes out here locally and inspects. They typically deal on a complaint basis only.
Further respond to that. Who monitors emptying sealed tanks? And then when you empty the sealed tanks, where do you empty it? Okay, which is another problem. So you're throwing, you got, one solution isn't necessarily better than the other. And in this particular case, we're offering a compromise that we think works across the board on lots of issues. And under the circumstances, we're prepared to work with the state. Every system is put in site-specific as to what the requirements are. Obviously, you have to maintain those systems. And most homeowners do, because replacing them is exceedingly expensive. As would be installing a sealed tank, which whenever, and hopefully it doesn't overflow and back up into your house, you have to find a place to put that effluent, which is going to go directly on the ground with very little evaporation before it hits the soil. So what I'm saying from the front end is that we're here on a compromise, okay, that we think works in this particular circumstance. We've got 2-acre lots. They're 10 times the size of a minimum lot size within the city limits. That's more than enough to handle the septic systems that are required out there. We're on high ground. We meet the requirements for septic systems on state standards, and we think under the circumstances that that modification of the city's letter of assurance, plus the other ones we talked about, make a good compromise and make something that can work for both the Aggies and the city.
John, a question. Since there is no monitors for a septic tank, and backing up into a house would certainly, the homeowners would certainly be those monitors. So which is the better?
Well, I would tell you what, if my neighbor's yard smells like a sewer, I think I'm a pretty good monitor too.
They said the lots are too big for that.
Too big for what? The lots are 10 times the size of a city lot. Okay, and if you've got a septic tank that's going south and not working, it doesn't take long for anybody to know that.
Thank you, John. Are there any other discussions or questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Mayor, I'd like to call the question.
Is there a second to that? Seconded by Alderman Eisenhammer. All those in favor of the motion or the approval of the letter of assurance as recommended by the Plan Commission, all in favor say aye.
Excuse me, Mayor, I believe you have to vote on the calling the question.
Oh, I'm sorry. We have to vote on the call the question. All those in favor of calling the question, say aye. Opposed? Okay, we'll go ahead and take the vote now. All those in favor of the motion to approve the letter of assurance as recommended by the Plan Commission, say aye. Opposed? The letter of assurance as recommended by the Plan Commission has been approved. Next, we have to go to the consideration of the plat of Lanew's third edition. But before we can go, we have to find out, I'll need to find out if, John, will you be willing to sign that letter of assurance that's recommended by the Plan Commission?
No.
No? Okay. Therefore, I need a motion to either deny the approval of the plat of Lanew's third edition or a motion to table the plat of Lanew's third edition until the city has a signed letter of assurance.
Move table.
Move the table. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alderman Giselbeck. Any further discussion? All those in favor then say aye. Opposed? Motion carried to table the plat of Lanew's third edition until the city has a signed letter of assurance. Moving on to item number 6 is the 2007 city budget ordinance number 06-22. Second reading and council action. Tracy?
Thank you. I don't have any prepared remarks on the 2007 budget. We did spend a little bit of time on the first reading, just recapping. But if you have any questions, I would try to answer those. If not, I would ask for your approval of the budget ordinance.
Is there a motion for that approval?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Alderwoman Arbogast. Is there a second? Seconded by Alderwoman Walder. Any questions or discussion? If not, then all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Going on to item number 7 is approval of the capital outlay accumulation depreciation reserve plan, resolution number 06-45. Tracy?
Thank you. State law allows us to set aside money each year for future capital outlay purchases, and this is the mechanism that state law provides, is a resolution appropriating those monies or setting those monies aside. And this is consistent, or the amount set aside by this resolution, I should say, are consistent with the long-term capital improvement plan approved earlier this year by the City Council.
Do I have a motion then to approve the resolution 06-45? So moved by Alderman Giselbeck. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alderman Johnson. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 8 is the 2007 Urban Renewal Assessment Roll, resolution number 06-43. And of course, we've been doing this for many years. I'll begin with the public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak to the issue? If not, then I'll close the public hearing and go to council action. Could I have a motion then for the approval of the Urban Renewal Assessment Roll? So moved by Alderman Solberg. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Alderwoman Walder. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Agenda item number 10, consideration of quotes received for purchase of a fire department rescue truck body. That's been withdrawn until the next meeting on October 2nd. Moving on to item number 11, authorization of the solid... Excuse me, Mayor. Sorry. Item number 9 is the consideration of snow removal quotes for the 2006-2007 season. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to move over that.
We don't want to have any snow.
We don't want to have any snow. I thought that if I went over it, we wouldn't have any snow. Mike?
Thanks a lot for that, Mayor. Anyway, this is an annual event where we approve all of the snow quotes. Before we get there, I'd like you there's been some questions in the past how we arrive at who gets to come and work with us in the storms. And I've got just a few items there. The availability is the proximity of the operating equipment to Watertown. There are other contract obligations. Trucks and equipment are able to start and perform. They're currently licensed and insured. They're able to go to work, in other words. Boxes empty of previous day's loads, hoist work and latches latching, cutting edges in good condition, and minimum fuel leaks. Next is the ability. Can the operator or owner do a proficient job with little redirection? What is his ability to find his way around town? Is he conscious of traffic and other traffic concerns? Considerate of the city's property and also other property owners' property. And then ability to get started and stick with the project until a given area is done or the workday is completed. Finally, we get down to the cost, which isn't primary to us, but it's a major factor. And the previous comments have a definite factor on the overall cost and efficiency of each snow removal event. Major safety infractions or recklessness and incompleteness causes delays, scheduling problems, and poor image building. I'm looking for a motion to approve all of these bids. These prices are in effect for snow removal and other incidental work, like if you should have a need for flood or other disasters. There's a sheet of quote tabulation that has this year's bid and last year's bid in quotations. We expected a major increase. Fuel was $2.30 last year, and it could approach $4 this year. So what I'm looking for, unless anybody has any questions, is a motion to approve all of those quotes, and then we'll accept from them. It was approved by the Public Works Committee on 9/12/06.
Have a motion, please? Motion. Motion by Alderman Wilson. Is there a second? Seconded by Alderman Meisenheimer. Any questions or discussions for Mike?
If the fuel prices keep going down, which is what they're doing now, are we going to be paying inflated prices?
I don't think they're going to go down that much. Their repairs will probably catch up to. I don't know that, Brad. I don't.
That's a tough one to answer. Any other questions for Mike? If not, then all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Ron.
As I said earlier, item number 10 has been withdrawn until October 2nd. Moving on to item number 11 is the authorization of the solid waste management grant for landfill compost pad rehabilitation, resolution 06-44. Mike Berger.
Thank you. I would like to request permission for the mayor to sign a grant application and the subsequent grant agreement for a solid waste management grant to assist in funding the 2007 compost pad rehabilitation project. Just to give a real brief history, this pad was constructed and designed to divert compost runoff to a lined pond. This prevents this runoff from seeping into the groundwater or impacting stormwater. Once this water is captured, we either use it to water these rows or truck it to wastewater for treatment. Currently, the older portion of the pad, the east 300 feet, has settled and cracked, and this results in puddles of runoff that are trapped on the pad. They may seep into groundwater through a crack in the pad, or at least one area flow off the pad and impact stormwater in an area that has settled quite a bit. So we have budgeted $218,700 for the engineering and construction of this project, and our plan is to apply for the maximum grant available, which would be 60% with a 40% match. And of course, any actual award would depend upon the funds available, the number of applications, and so forth. But I would like to move forward with this grant application and request permission for the mayor to sign the grant application and any subsequent grant agreement.
Is there a motion to that effect, please? So moved by Alderman Solberg. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Alderwoman Arbogast. Any further questions or discussion for Mike? If not, all those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 12 is authorization of the mayor to sign an agreement with Helms & Associates to provide engineering services for the 2007 compost pad rehabilitation project. Mike?
Yes, thanks. I'd like to request permission for the mayor to sign this agreement, again, to this compost pad project for the engineering services with Helms & Associates. Helms & Associates have been providing the engineering services for our solid waste department master plan, D-cell construction projects, and previous compost pad projects. The estimated cost of these engineering services is $8,000 for design and $10,000 for construction, or a total of $18,000. And we have budgeted for this in the 2007 budget, and this comes with the approval of the September 12th Public Works Committee meeting.
Is there a motion, please, to that effect? So moved by Alderman Giselbeck. Is there a second? Seconded by Alderman Johnson. Any questions or discussion? If not, then all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mike. Item number 13 is authorization of the mayor to sign a lease agreements for off-premise advertising associated with the Stormwater Education and Outreach Program. And Herb?
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. I'm requesting authorization for the mayor to sign a lease agreement with drive-by signs for off-premise advertising associated with the Stormwater Phase 2 Education and Outreach Program. As part of the 2006 budget process, in the stormwater budget, the council approved $17,500 during that process to support education and outreach for Stormwater Phase 2. As part of that education and outreach program was to lease some off-premise advertising billboard space for the purpose of creating additional Stormwater Phase 2 awareness for the general public. I think you all will recall some of the cartoon type of things that we've seen in the fish painted on the stormwater drains that says, go straight to the river. We'll be talking things such as that are eye attention getters for the general public as they're passing by. Staff's been has worked with a number of the local sign vendors, and drive-by signs has actually came up with a couple of really ideal locations. We believe on Highway 212, one by Weiss Mantles and the other on the eastbound lane, and one by Taco John's on the westbound lane that would certainly allow us to accomplish that goal of education and outreach as we've been striving to do, and it'd create some flexibility because we could keep flopping the message between those two signs. The reason we're here tonight asking for permission for the mayor to sign the lease agreement is we've got a really tight window to get this accomplished. We just ran into the opportunity late last week, and if we don't get approval, we probably lose the opportunity in 2006 to in fact use our budget monies and get some advertising started. So I'm here tonight to ask for your authorization to allow the mayor to do that. We've got sufficient funds in the water resources budget in the 2006 budget to in fact handle the funds required to support the lease terms.
Is there a motion then to approve the signing of the lease agreements? So moved by Alderman Johnson. Is there a second? Seconded by Alderman Wilson. Any questions or discussion?
I have one question. Herb, are we going to be using any other media or GovTV or anything else to put that message forward?
Actually, we've been doing that all along. I think if you watch GovTV, you're going to see on a repetitive basis a lot of stormwater general awareness. That's also why Rick Schlechter gets in front of the Public Works Committee and the Finance Committee and the Council and talks to you periodically about the kinds of things we are doing. We also try to get spots in the local newspaper a couple times a year. Those are all part of our long-range goals as part of the Stormwater Phase 2 in terms of education and outreach. And remember, that's only one of the 6 minimum control measures that we have to accomplish. Certainly getting the message out to our construction community, which is really probably, in my estimation, the biggest goal in the 2007 construction year. We're going to be working on to minimize the amount of sediment and erosion control that comes off of construction sites. That's probably 90% of the problem in all estimation. Getting the message out to everybody else is a good thing, but we've really got to break the code with our construction community.
Any other questions or discussion? If not, then all those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Herb. Item number 14 is approval of an amendment to the Police Department's ATV loan agreement with Sheehan Cycle, providing for a substitution of one vehicle. Chief Vitek.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here before you tonight just seeking approval of the amendment to the Police Department's ATV agreement with Sheehan's. Essentially, one of the cycles that we were using was sold, and so Mike Sheehan has been gracious enough to give us another one, and with your approval, we'll outfit that and continue on.
Thank you. Is there a motion then to approval of the amendment?
So moved.
So moved by Alderman Garnos. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Alderwoman Arbogast. Any questions or discussion? If not, then all those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 15, authorization to participate in 2 grants for the Police Department to fund training event to be co-hosted with the SDLET. Chief Vitek.
Yes, Sergeant Lee McPeak of the Police Department has been working steadily on 2 grant proposals to the South Dakota Law Enforcement Training Academy. This would basically provide us with the funding necessary to host some advanced training here in Watertown. Essentially, we're asking for permission to pursue those grants for a total of $8,090.
Thank you, Chief Vitek. Is there a motion then to approve the participation in the 2 grants? So moved by Alderman Giselbeck. Is there a second? Seconded by Alderman Meisenheimer. Any questions or discussion? If not, then all those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Chief Vitek, you might as well stay up there. Is there any items on the open? I have 3 items, and one is dealing with Chief Vitek and a COPS grant application. Chief, you want to go with that, please?
Yes, you'll recall some months ago that you granted permission for the police department to seek funding through the Secure Our Schools 2006 COPS grant. We received notification today that the city has been awarded $49,849. That would essentially pay for our additional school resource officer's salary for 2 years, plus roughly $6,000 toward a laptop computer. I'm seeking permission from you tonight for myself and the finance director, Tracy Turback, to sign that and proceed forward with that grant award.
Is there a motion to that effect, please? So moved by Alderwoman Walter. Is there a second? Seconded by Alderman Wilson. Any questions or discussion?
Good job.
Good job, Chief Vitek. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is the library issue, and there's 3 items that we need to address. We'll deal one at a time. Mike?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Let's start with the first one. This is the one that we were to you here several weeks ago with the change in the steel. We have now a final contract change order. The amount of that remained $13,380. This is the actual change in the contract for that. We need approval for that.
Is there a motion for the approval of the contract change order for $13,380? So moved by Alderwoman Walter. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alderman Johnson. Any questions or discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Number 2, Mike.
The next one is a work change order in the amount of $5,846. This is to remove a section of sidewalk that was planned to be left there, but in looking at the condition of it, it really needs to be replaced. The contractor indicates that if we will also give them the nod to replace the asphalt that abuts that concrete and curb, that we can save another $1,200 later on.
Is there a motion then to approve the contract change order for $5,846? Is there a motion to that, please?
Excuse me, Mayor, the actual cost would be $4,646 with that
Okay.
$1,200 savings that Mike mentioned.
Okay, so it's $46.46?
Correct.
Okay. Is there a motion then to approve that change order for $4,646?
So moved.
So moved by Alderman Wilson. Is there a second? Seconded by Alderman Garnos. Any questions or discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Third one, Mike.
This is the expensive one. This is for $15,377.43, and it's to tear down the 4 walls that we left of the old building. Yes. What it is once they got into, the original plan was to leave those 4 walls because you need firewalls around a mechanical room where your boilers and things are. Once they started tearing the building apart, they found that the walls, 2 of those walls are just sitting there. They're not attached to anything. And it's actually cheaper for us to take all 4 of them down than it is to try to repair them. So that is the proposal.
Thank you, Mike. Is there a motion then to approve the change order for $15,377.43?
So moved.
So moved by Alderman Johnson. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alderwoman Arbogast. Any questions or discussion? All those in favor? Whoops.
All of this comes out of the contingency amount that we've already.
Right. This is well within our contingency. After these changes are in effect, I believe we still have something over $84,000 in the project contingency, so we're still sitting pretty well, I think.
Okay.
Still a long ways to go, baby. We ain't done now.
Yeah. Okay. Any other discussions? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Item number 17 is old business. Is there any old business to take care of? Item number 18 is new business. Is there any new business to come before the council? If not, number 19 is liaison member reports.
Safety Committee, 7 o'clock in the morning.
Tomorrow morning, right?
And we're in the council chambers, I believe.
Oh, we are? Okay. Very good. I thought it was upstairs.
We'll still be upstairs then? Okay.
So we're upstairs. Okay, for the safety meeting tomorrow morning at 7.
There's also a Finance Committee meeting tomorrow afternoon at 4:15. That will be in the council chambers.
Right. And next, we will need to go into executive session in regards to contract negotiations. And we may be taking some action when we come out of the executive session. So could I have a motion to go into executive session? So moved by Alderman Giselbeck, seconded by Alderwoman Arbogast. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We will go into executive session.